humanize a business? Where do you start to do that? You're going to go right to the 8 pillars, aren't you?
Well, I would definitely do that, and I'm holding off just because you want me to. But
no,
that's where the answer is. But let me say this: the more human you make it, I mean, look, I trust this. The epic research out of Harvard said this. It was very, it was epic, and it was also a little rubbing in our kind of socially correct academia world, because here Putnam's research out of Harvard said, you know what, people are twice as trusting in the most homogenous settings. And in that research, it was white on white neighborhoods, right. African American on African American neighborhoods, mostly, that were researched. Now, I think of diversity as much bigger than that. I can be more like an African American that's had certain experiences than maybe, you know, somebody else. I don't think it's all a color thing. I think we can have diversity of minds and thoughts. I grew up on a farm. You know, there's so many ways we're diverse. But in that research, they said, you know what, they're half as trusting of others if they're less homogenous, in the least homogenous areas. So there is something that happens when we get to know each other, when we connect, when we have less fear that that person is so much different than us, then our trust does tend to go up. And of course that helps. So basically, trust, what you're saying is obviously true. Trust comes back to be fundamentally about relationships. Look, people trust is much more important than brand trust. It's much deeper than brand trust. I don't trust American Family Insurance, but I do trust Jim Knapp. And as long as Jim is
right.
at American Family, I'm going to trust them. But if he goes somewhere else, it's Jim that I trust, not so much American Family. And this is the same. Banks, if people would learn this, they'd say, you've got to create organizations like this where people trust people. That's where it starts. And by the way, one person can ruin a whole brand. You go to the bank, and if the treats you that way, but then the loan officer treats you that way, if they've been off brand, they've lost trust. If the teller and the president all treat you the same.